So, when I say Calvinism and art, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's probably, smashing statues, whitewashing church walls, that kind of thing. But what if I told you that's really only half the story? What if, instead of just destroying art, this movement created an entirely new visual world, one that's still with us today, hiding in plain sight? Okay, let's get into it.
I mean, just look at this. This right here is the image we all have. A city council in Zurich ordering people to remove gravestones so they can use them for building materials. It's shocking, right? It feels so disrespectful, and it just seems to prove that the Reformation was basically at war with history, with memory, with art itself. This is our starting point.
So yeah, this impulse to smash things, to cleanse and purify, that's the dominant story we all know. We picture these beautiful old churches just stripped bare, ancient paintings covered over with plain white paint, a world where all that visual richness was just erased. And look, for a while, that definitely happened. But that is not where this story ends.
Now here's where things get really interesting. The timing. By the time John Calvin, the guy whose name is basically synonymous with the whole movement, shows up as a major player in Geneva, a lot of that initial destruction is already over. The old world of idols and processions, it was already gone.
And that's the real key here. Calvin's main problem wasn't tearing down the old medieval world. In many ways, that job was already done. His real challenge, and it was a much, much harder one, was figuring out what to build in that now empty space. How do you create an entirely new society, a new way of living, and maybe most importantly, a new way of seeing the world?
To build something new, he started with this radical theological 180. See, the medieval view was that you journey through life, you use images and sacraments, and you hope that one day you might get a vision of God. Well, Calvin flipped that completely on its head. He argued you have to start with knowledge of God, which you get from Scripture, and only then can you actually see and understand the world and yourself the right way.
You see, for Calvin, God's glory wasn't some far-off, hidden thing. Not at all. It was everywhere, shining out of everything in creation. The problem wasn't with God. The problem was with us. Our own, as he put it, blindness is what keeps us from seeing the world as it really is.
Which, of course, leads to the absolute central question of this whole project. If people are naturally blind to reality, how do you fix their vision? How do you teach an entire culture how to see again?
And the answer wasn't just to make up some new rules. It was so much bigger than that. It was to create a whole new mental map for society, a fundamental rewiring of how people perceived reality itself. They moved from a world they felt through holy objects to a world they read like a book. And you can really see the difference here. On one side, you've got the medieval sacramental gaze, this deep, emotional, contemplative staring at a holy image, feeling its supernatural power. And on the other side, you get this new intellectual gaze. It's clear, it's analytical. One scholar even calls it a cold gaze. It's not about feeling, it's about understanding.
This is the absolute key. Images don't just vanish, but their entire job description changes. They get textualized. They become carriers of information, of moral lessons, of theological truths. An image is no longer an object for you to worship, it's a page in a book that you are supposed to read and understand.
All right, so where did this new art even show up? If it wasn't in churches filled with statues of saints, then where was it? Well, it turns out it was in places we might not even think to look for religious art today. It was hiding in plain sight. This quote from a really important Calvinist text called the Belgic Confession gives us our first major clue. If creation itself is a most elegant book, and all the creatures in it are like characters on a page, well, then nature itself becomes the main canvas.
And you can see this idea just come to life in Dutch Golden Age landscape paintings. Take a classic work by someone like Jacob van Ruysdael. You look at it and you see some trees, a little cottage, a cloudy sky. It seems totally secular, just a really nice picture of the countryside. But there is so much more going on.
For someone back then, someone trained in this new way of seeing, this landscape was a dense theological text. Those broken trees and that dilapidated house, that's the brokenness of the world because of sin. The dramatic light breaking through the clouds, that wasn't just weather, that was the hope of God's redemption. Even the tiny little people going about their daily work, they were playing their part in this huge divine drama. Every single element was meant to be read.
Okay, so if pictures of the world became texts that you had to read, it kind of begs the opposite question. What happened to actual texts? What did they put on those big, empty, whitewashed church walls?
Well, they filled them with words, literally. In the Great Church of Haarlem, the spot where a massive painted altarpiece used to be was replaced with this, a text panel. It's an oil painting, all right, but the subject of the painting is the biblical passage describing the Last Supper.
And this just nails the complete reversal that happened. The word has now become an image. You're not supposed to just gaze at it in deep thought. You are meant to read it, memorize it, and understand it. Images were now working for the word, not the other way around. And this drive to restore divine order wasn't just in painting, it completely reshaped architecture too. French Protestant architects, they were known as Huguenots, saw their work as this powerful public statement. They wanted to skip over what they saw as the corrupt medieval styles. So instead, they looked back to classical forms, even to Old Testament models, and they focused on buildings that were firm, that were useful, and that embodied a kind of divine, rational order.
So when you pull it all together, what's the legacy? What's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it's an aesthetic that is so successful, so pervasive, that a lot of the time we don't even see it as an aesthetic. It is the subtle art of concealing art.
You see, this new Calvinist way of seeing didn't create another obvious, grand, symbolic universe to replace the old one with all its saints and angels. Its influence was way more subtle. It was an indirectness, a plainness, a focus on order and function that's become so deeply baked into the modern Western mindset that we hardly even notice it.
This quote, which was actually used by a famous Puritan preacher, says everything. It is also the point of art to conceal art. The whole goal was to create this highly purposeful, highly structured world that looked completely natural, simple, and unadorned. It's an artifice that doesn't look like artifice at all.
And that really leaves us with a final thought. This whole movement was a deliberate project to reshape how people see reality, and its legacy is a plain style that's so common now we don't even see it. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What hidden art, what concealed framework is shaping the way that you and I see the world right now?